headlines. North Korea refuses to apologize for the sinking of a South Korean warship 5 years ago and instead demands that Seoul drop its sanctions on the regime. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol warns of short-term uncertainties for the Korean economy despite the overall direction it's taking towards recovery. And Korean Olympic swimming champion Park Tae-hwan gets an 18-month suspension for an anti-doping violation. He has 21 days to appeal. Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I am Kang Chery. It's been nearly 5 years since the deadly torpedo attack on a South Korean warship, Cheonan, and in its latest denial of involvement in the Cheonan incident, Pyongyang called on Seoul to lift sanctions for the sake of better inter-Korean ties. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea says it has no apology for the sinking of South Korean warship Cheonan because it had nothing to do with it. Nonsense and never acceptable. That's what the North's National Defense Commission said on Tuesday in response to Seoul's demand for an apology as a precondition to lifting sanctions. Under the so-called May 24th measures, South Korea suspended nearly all inter-Korean economic projects following the torpedo attack 5 years ago. The Unification Ministry dismissed Pyongyang's latest statement, reiterating that the sanctions will not be lifted until North Korea takes responsibility for the attack. All this comes just 2 days ahead of the 5th anniversary of the tragedy that left 46 South Korean sailors dead. It's also an incident seen as a major turning point in inter-Korean relations. In an effort to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula, Seoul repeatedly offered to discuss the possible lifting of sanctions at the negotiating table. But with the latest turn of events, experts say North Korea seems to be seeking an upper hand in inter-Korean relations.
North Korea is sending the message that it will not beg for dialogue with the South. Rather than lifting the May 24th measures, it appears to be after the strategic goal of a shift in Seoul's North Korea policy.
With the joint U.S.-South Korea military drills ending in April, there were hopes for renewed momentum between the two Koreas. But experts say a sudden improvement seems more like wishful thinking. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Responding to North Korea's latest claim that it would not be afraid to fire off nuclear weapons if it felt cornered, the United States has urged Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear program. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said Monday, Washington time, that the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea is required by multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Harf was responding to an interview given by the North Korean ambassador to Britain, who said Pyongyang would use nuclear weapons if Washington struck with nuclear weapons first. She said Washington remains fully prepared to take action against any North Korean threats, and she affirmed America's commitment to defend itself and its allies. Amid lingering speculations that the U.S. is thinking about deploying its missile defense system to South Korea, more U.S. experts have weighed on this issue. They say the deployment is the minimum operational strategy necessary to counter North Korean threats. Our Connie Kim tells us more.
U.S. experts are throwing their support behind the possible deployment to South Korea of the American missile defense system, saying it'll make North Korea think twice before launching provocations. Ben Jackson, who served as a policy advisor at the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense, said the potential THAAD deployment wouldn't solve all the security issues, but is a minimum required to provide protection in regards to the North's nuclear and ballistic missile threats. Speaking at a seminar in Washington hosted by Asan Institute for International Policy, Jackson said it is better to have more missile shields as long as the price is right. He added that the optimal outcome would be the integration of South Korean and U.S. systems. Daniel Chu, a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, said THAAD should give China more incentive to work with Washington on North Korea, especially if it is concerned about the implications of the system beyond countering North Korean threats. Chu also stressed that it is unproductive for China to speak of THAAD's purpose given the nature of Pyongyang's nuclear threats. China strongly opposes a possible deployment as THAAD's radar system, which can cover 2,000 kilometers, could be used to monitor parts of mainland China, including Beijing. Following high-level talks last week, a senior Chinese foreign ministry official publicly called on South Korea to consider Beijing's interests and concerns about THAAD. Seoul, however, continues to stress that there have been no official discussions with Washington on the matter. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
A large forest fire continues to burn at the inter-Korean border. South Korean officials said earlier on Tuesday that the blaze on both sides of the DMZ was close to being extinguished, but flames quickly reignited as strong winds picked up amid dry conditions in the area. Hundreds of firefighters and military personnel are battling to contain the situation there. With the fire still about 6 kilometers away from the closest border village in the south, no evacuation orders have been made so far. The exact cause of the fire is still unknown. Officials say it apparently started near a North Korean guard post Monday morning before quickly spreading into South Korean territory. A video clip posted on the website of the Japanese embassy in the United States is raising some eyebrows here in Korea. In this video titled "Nation Building in the Post-War Era, Japan as Reliable Partner," Tokyo lists Korea as an example of a recipient of Japan's aid, with funds helping to build one of Korea's biggest steel plants and a subway line. The timing of this video's release about a month before Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's trip to Washington is causing speculation. There has been growing concern in Seoul that Abe will not apologize for Japan's past historical wrongdoings during his visit to the White House. Korea's top central banker says the domestic economy will continue to recover, although there are lingering short-term uncertainties. The low-key rate is one of the main factors contributing to his forecast. Our Kang Chery has the details.
Speaking with economic experts on Tuesday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said he expects the domestic economy to gain momentum. These comments come after the central bank cut its key rate 3 times in the last 8 months, leaving it at a historic low of 1.75%. Those cuts boosted home transactions and led to a sliding Korean won, raising the price competitiveness of local exporters in the global market. The combination of those factors, along with the government's aggressive stimulus measures and low oil prices, have created favorable economic conditions. Dubai crude prices have dropped nearly 50% from a year ago.
The fall in oil prices increases purchasing power. It also pulls down production costs for local manufacturers.
The top central banker, however, cautioned against too much optimism, saying short-term uncertainties still linger over global oil prices and the U.S. Federal Reserve policy. The governor cited Fed Chief Janet Yellen's statement that policy decisions will depend on incoming economic data, indicating that the direction of Korea's key interest rate remains flexible based on fresh information. Kang Chery, ARIRANG News.
The Incheon Free Economic Zone opened up a promotional hall this Tuesday to boost its status as a regional business hub. Also known as the IFAZ, the International Business Zone is part of the government's deregulation drive aimed at attracting multinational companies and foreign investments. Korea is competing with established business hubs in Northeast Asia like Singapore and Hong Kong. The zone aims to strengthen technology-based businesses and the service sector. Experts predict that IFAZ will be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the current government's commitment to deregulation. President Park Geunhye says the promises made on public employee pension and labor market reforms must be kept to ensure the success of future generations. At a meeting with her senior secretaries today, the president referred to the upcoming deadlines for the reform plans, stressing that the reforms cannot be carried out without cooperation from the National Assembly and related parties. She called on the administration to meet the deadlines through dialogue and compromise. And for the first time later today, President Park will meet with her special advisors since appointing them earlier this year. The 7 advisors were named to help the president strengthen external communication in the areas of politics, civil affairs, security, and public relations. A study conducted by a local think tank says Korea ranks poorly in terms of social conflicts when compared to other OECD economies, which apparently is also taking a toll on the economy. That's why experts say the government here should be doing more for the sake of social cohesion. Our Kwon-swa has a story.
Poor communication between the government and the people, the gap between the rich and the poor, disputes among politicians. These are just a few factors causing social conflict in Korea. According to a recent report, the nation's social conflict index was the 5th highest among 24 OECD nations. Only 4 countries found it more difficult to deal with social conflict than Korea, while many more handle it better than Korea, with Sweden having the least problems. Studies reveal the way a country deals with social conflict is reflected in its economic growth, and they stress the importance of cohesion in areas like politics, economy, and social culture. In fact, a 10% reduction in social conflict is said to increase the GDP per person by around 1.4%. Due to this correlation between social cohesion and economic progress, experts say the government needs to find more effective ways to manage these problems. Korea's social conflict management index is among the lowest in the OECD, ranking 27th. But data shows there has been improvement, as back in 2000, Korea was nearly rock bottom and has gradually climbed the ranks. Analysts say, however, there is still a long way to go, especially as people are prone to become more and more sensitive towards conflicts and their own interests as they gain more information on social issues.
The government and public institutions should be the main agents of managing conflicts, but they are still too one-sided and authoritative. That's why these social conflicts are expanding.
Park added that the economy would actually feel benefits through the process of solving conflicts. Kwon-swa, ARIRANG News.
It's less common to see people with tuberculosis in developed countries than in developing countries. Although Korea is considered a developed nation, it still has one of the highest tuberculosis mortality rates in the OECD. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
This patient, identified only by her surname Chung, recently found out that she has tuberculosis. She says she's been coughing constantly since last fall and often experiences shortness of breath.
I've been stressed recently due to problems at home. I couldn't eat very well.
Chung is one of the 35,000 patients who were recently diagnosed with tuberculosis in Korea. The country sees nearly 8 times the number of TB cases compared to the OECD average. Korea has one of the highest fatality rates from the disease among member countries. More than 2,200 patients died in 2013 alone. Doctors say it's important to wash your hands thoroughly and detect tuberculosis in its early stages. They advise getting a medical checkup if coughing lasts for more than 2 weeks.
Patients delaying treatment are highly likely to suffer from hemoptysis or coughing up blood. Tuberculosis patients that enter the intensive care unit from cases like these, the mortality rate is close to 100%.
In response, the Ministry of Health and Welfare is increasing efforts to eradicate the disease. It's dispatching around 400 medical personnel to community medical centers across the country so that each tuberculosis patient can get more intensive attention. The ministry is also cutting the cost of treatment. Starting in 2016, tuberculosis patients won't have to pay a cent for medical help for the disease. Overall, the ministry expects to reduce the number of TB patients by half by 2020. Kim Jeong, ARIRANG News.
Trying to remove water from windows or glasses without leaving smears or smudges can be a real hassle sometimes. But thanks to this one local research institute, we may no longer have to deal with that hassle. Our Lee Ju-yeol tells us more.
Driving in the rain can be dangerous, especially when you can't clear your windshield properly. A research team at the Korea Institute of Science and Technology has developed a solution to that problem, and they took a few cues from nature. When you look at a flower petal, water rolls right off it. So the scientists tried to emulate that action by adding ultra-microscopic bumps to the surface of the glass.
We specifically apply nanotechnology because we wanted water to bounce off the glass.
With the help of the nano bumps, the glass stays waterproof, fog-free, and dust-free. This latest research has been published in the online journal Scientific Reports, and the lead researcher says demand for this weather-resistant glass is high. It can be applied to three-dimensional curved surfaces, as well as car windows, cameras, or eyewear. Until now, the manufacturing process to incorporate nanotechnology was very complicated, but domestic researchers simplified it and used water instead of chemicals.
The manufacturing process is simple and eco-friendly. If we can continue making them in large amounts, I think we can make them available to consumers in 2 to 3 years' time.
Until then, stay dry and drive safe. Lee Ju-yeol, ARIRANG News.
One of Korea's most popular Olympic medalists, Park Tae-hwan, has received an 18-month ban for testing positive for a drug test. The ban cast a long shadow of doubt over whether he will ever be able to swim competitively again. Our S.J. Lee tells us more.
Korea's Marine boy Park Tae-hwan, who tested positive for testosterone last fall, was hit with an 18-month ban on Monday, following a short hearing at the Switzerland headquarters of the world swimming body, FINA. The ban will remain effective until March 2016. In theory, that means Park could still take part in the 2016 Rio Olympics, but he will certainly miss the 2015 World Championships in Russia this summer. There have been concerns Park would be hit with the maximum 24-month ban, which would have definitely counted him out of Rio. Park maintains that he never knowingly received shots that contained any banned substance. The verdict means all of the swimmer's results after the positive dope test have been declared void, and he will have to give back the 6 medals he won at last year's Asian Games in Korea's western port city of Incheon. Park, with his good looks and clean-cut image, has been a widely popular sports star and product endorser in Korea and elsewhere in Asia, and his swimming record prior to this scandal speaks for itself. On top of his many Asian Games titles, Park won a gold medal in the 400-meter freestyle and silver in the 200-meter freestyle at the Beijing Olympics in 2008. He also snagged 2 silvers at the 2012 London Olympics and golds at the 2007 and 2011 World Championships. So while this ban is a major setback and tarnishes his legacy, his legion of fans will hope he can stay focused and make a triumphant comeback at the Rio Olympics. S.J. Lee, ARIRANG News.
The United States is getting ready for next year's presidential election, and already the first White House hopeful has stepped forward, kicking off what looks like to be a rush of candidates throwing their hats into the ring over the next coming weeks. And to tell us more about this story and others, our Shin Se-min is joining us from the News Center. Se-min, what do we have on this first candidate?
Yes, Chetty, he is Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and he's set on taking the White House in 2016. 2016. Now, this 44-year-old Republican first announced his campaign with a brief tweet along with a 30-second video with his voiceover, a montage of landmarks and symbols. Now, Cruz is the first serious contender to formally declare his bid, and this is him at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia on Monday.
I believe in the power of millions of courageous conservatives rising up to reignite the promise of America. And that is why today I am announcing that I'm running for President of the United States.
Now, the first-term senator had been expected to run for some time as he looked for campaign headquarters in Houston and terminated his Canadian citizenship as part of groundwork. The Tea Party favorite is known for his leadership during efforts to shut down the government in 2013 as Republicans were against Obama's Affordable Care Act. Now, he is also famous for making that symbolic 21-hour speech against it on the Senate floor, and it's looking to be a strong contender against a potential Democratic rival Hillary Clinton, who also hinted at a bid by early next month.
And let's move over to China. Those convicted of being involved in the Kunming attack last year have finally paid price for their actions. Now, 3 of the 4 captured attackers have been executed for killing nearly 36 Chinese at the station. Do tell us more. Fill us in with the details.
Well, it was finalized in a court ruling made last September. 4 attackers were arrested at the site of the crime at Kunming Railway Station in Yunnan Province. The Chinese government said killings were carried out by knife-wielding separatists from the western part of Xinjiang that left 31 people dead. The Chinese authorities blamed violence on separatists from Xinjiang, home to the Muslim Uyghur minority, where a series of similar incidents have been seen in recent years. Now, the 3 were executed on charges of leading a terrorist organization and international homicide by the Supreme People's Court. 1 female attacker, pregnant at the time, is serving life in prison. Now, the activists in the region say the abolition of local residents' cultural and religious freedom is fueling the agitation in the area.
Now, amid tensions over how the Eurozone will handle Greece's situation, its money problem, the Greek Prime Minister and German Chancellor put on a public display on Monday. What was the gist of their meeting? Did they find themselves on the same page?
Well, Chery, it is still unclear. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel greeted the newly elected Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras during his first visit to Berlin, and it is still unknown whether they narrowed the differences on Greece's economic reforms, as the country is in need of a fresh flow of cash from its creditors. However, the 2 did agree to work for a better European future. Now, the leaders held bilateral talks followed by a meeting over dinner on Monday. The Prime Minister reportedly said that he was not in Germany to resolve his country's dire liquidity problems, but to find common ground in moving forward in the Eurozone. Both Athens and Berlin have been at odds over the Greek Prime Minister's statement of undoing the austerity measures proposed by the previous Greek government.
And already it's been nearly a week since the deadly jihadist attack last week at Tunisia's National Museum that left more than 20 people dead. And this museum was planning on reopening this Tuesday, but they decided to scrap the plan last minute. What happened?
That's right. Tunisia's National Museum put off its plan to reopen the area due to security reasons after the jihadist Islamic State group's attack on foreign tourists left 21 people dead. Now, the Bardo Museum originally planned to allow the public back in on Tuesday, but officials said it cannot take in a large number of visitors just yet. The officials said, however, that the museum will reopen this coming Sunday. And the incidents raised fears over Tunisia's tourism industry and marked the first ever attack claimed by the country's Sunni Muslim extremist group. Chery?
All right, Sammy, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for those updates, and we will see you again in just about 2 hours.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. So dry conditions are affecting most regions nationwide and humidity levels remain very low. So make sure to stay hydrated and be extra careful when dealing with outdoor fire. Currently, it is mostly clear skies nationwide due to a high pressure front, and it's about 5 degrees here in the capital, but wind chills are making it feel about 3 degrees colder than the actual readings. And tomorrow, it looks like we will start off the day under chilly conditions due to cold air sweeping in from the north, but do keep in mind that the mercury will rise to above seasonal averages by the afternoon, so be aware of the big gap in numbers from day to night. On to Wednesday's readings. Seoul reaches a high of 15, Daegu and Gwangju 16, Busan hits 14. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon, that is, reaches a high of 14, Jeju 13, Dokdo hits 9. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Bo-kyung, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.